Welcome. This is all -1 quick shots. So, folks, today the theme today is call for political violence. We've seen a lot of this, and there is this idea on the left that a call for political violence is justified because they are living in an oppressed society that is oppressed by the far right-wing fascist, which, by the way, don't exist. Most of the people on the right are constitutionalists, which has nothing to do with fascism. But in any case, the far right-wing fascists are oppressing our society, even though we own all the institutions, even though we own academia, we own the mainstream media, we own Hollywood, we have all of the educational system as far as K through 12 as well. We have the largest party in the United States, the Democratic Party, with the most registered voters and the longest party to ever exist in history, as far as I understand. Usually parties change more often. They own everything and control everything, and yet it is the far-right extremists that are in control and in power and oppressing them. These people are psychotic, and in part, you should understand that this will not stop. It will not stop until we take action in within the government and say, get these people out. So Michigan rep removed from committees following Facebook comments, make them pay. And she called for some pretty nasty stuff. Tried to walk it back, but anyways. Michigan House Representative Cynthia A. Johnson was removed for a committee assignment today after following comments she made during a Facebook post live last night. And then a Speaker of the House, Lee Chatfield, and Speaker-elect Jason Wentworth today released the following statement. Threats to either Democrats or Republicans are unacceptable and un-American. Yes. They're even more unbecoming of an elected official. Rep. Johnson has been removed from her committee assignment, and we are looking for further disciplinary actions as proper authorities conduct their own investigations. Now, why is this important? It's important because this is an official, a person within the government calling for violence, as they do quite often. And you have to understand, folks, that this is nothing new from the Democrats. Yet somehow it is the right-wingers who basically do nothing as far as as far as the Republicans go, except for just go along with things, who are the evil, violent ones. Supposedly, even though Antifa has been in the street for the last 8 years and BLM destroying and rioting. Now, BLM calmed down until here recently, and then the media hyped something up to get people stirred up after lockdown. Supposedly, though, it is the far and extreme right. Supposedly, it is people like Kyle Rittenhouse. And yet, supposedly as well, the right on, say, YouTube or other social media are taking people down this far-right extremist rabbit hole, according to academics. Yet social media does nothing but ban anything, any threat of violence, any hint possibly, or anything that they consider, controversial. Yet they allow things like this to go on just fine, and people like Talcum X, that is Sean King, to make threats all the time over on Twitter. So here, a little quick 2-minute video. By the way, folks, I might go a little long today with the quick shot, but we'll see.
I just don't even know why there aren't uprisings all over the country, and maybe there will be.
People need to start taking to the streets. This is a dictator.
You know, there needs to be unrest in the streets for as long as there's unrest in our lives.
Enemies of the state.
Show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
Do something about your dad's immigration practices, you feckless.
When they go low, we kick them.
How do you resist the temptation to run up and wring her neck?
The biggest terror threat in this country is white men, most of them radicalized to the right.
I thought he should have punched him in the face. I said, even if you lost, he insulted your wife.
Yes.
He came down the escalator and called Mexicans rapists and murderers. He said, well, what do you think I should have done? I said, I think you should have punched him in the face, and then gotten out of the race. You would have been a hero.
I'd like to punch him in the face. I said if we were in high school, I'd take him behind the gym and beat the hell out of him.
Punch some people in the face!
When was the last time an actor assassinated a president?
They're still going to have to go out and put a bullet in Donald Trump, and that's a fact.
Look as his character is stabbed to death.
Where is John Wilkes Booth when you need him?
I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
A Missouri state senator is under investigation by the Secret Service after saying she hopes President Trump is assassinated.
I will go and take Trump out tonight. And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere.
And sadly, the domestic enemies to our voting system and our honoring our Constitution are right at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
They're not going to stop before Election Day in November, and they're not going to stop after Election Day. And that should be, everyone should take note of that on both levels, that this isn't, they're not going to let up, and they should not.
If you think we're rallying now, you ain't seen nothing yet.
So that is on Elijah Schaefer's Twitter. You can find that yourself, the most important video of 2020. If you do that, you look it up, just Google, or better yet, DuckDuckGo, as I did. This will come up. That was from Cauldron Pool. And folks, this is reoccurring. It's happening all the time. And yet they gaslight you. And people on the left believe that they are justified in this violence. Now, I've been making videos in my long segments and my usual regular content that goes about an hour or so about this quite a bit, and how left-wing violence is the way. The false dichotomy of left-right in this nation, isn't completely false if you look at it from the point of the Constitution on the right, freedom, liberty, minarchist, small government, local, people doing for themselves and helping their neighbors instead of the government doing for them. Versus the left wing, which is authoritarian, totalitarian, completely wanting to control every aspect of your life, high taxes, making you a dependent slave upon the state. Now, what they want to look at is this right-left paradigm that happened in Europe. Nazis versus, or fascist versus communist. Except for fascist and communist come from the same place. The fascists just thought they were a third way, where they were getting rid of the class struggle only to essentially bolster up the state. But I just covered this the other day in my segment about the ideologies here, the deeper ideologies, some philosophies within, based on first principles. I'm going to cover a little bit more of that in a segment coming up in a bit. But I want you to listen to Keith Olbermann here and some of the things that he said. I may not play this whole video, but just listen to what he's calling for. Well, if the video
Trump can be and must be expunged. The terrorist Trump must be defeated, and then he and his enablers and his supporters and his collaborators and the Mike Lees and the William Barrs and the Sean Hannitys and the Mike Pences and the Rudy Giulianis and the Kyle Rittenhouses and the Amy Coney Barretts must be prosecuted and convicted and removed from our society while we try to rebuild it.
I have a lot in common. We both think the president is mentally and emotionally unstable, and we both wrote books about it. The difference is I can say the full title of, I cannot say the full title of his book on daytime TV.
Why not?
Because he's the author of Trump is Bleeping Crazy, and this is not a joke.
Even as we dream of a return to reality and safety and the country for which our forefathers died, that the fight is not just to win an election, but to win it by enough to chase, at least for a moment, Trump and the maggots off the stage.
A lot of people are, of course, frustrated by Trump's reaction to the terror attack here in New York. But you said recently via tweet that Trump and his family have done more damage to America than bin Laden and ISIS combined.
Yes.
Do you believe that?
Who's the crazy one, folks? Who is the crazy one? I have this right here. This is a meme. These are literal quotes. Who are our enemies? This is the question of the first importance for our revolution. Our enemies must be labeled once and for all, put to an end in their subversive work. Enemies must be placed under special surveillance. They must be ruthlessly punished. And then finally, of course, that's Mao, Joseph Stalin, and Vladimir Lenin. Finally, we have AOC saying, is anyone archiving these Trump sycophants for when they try to deny their complicity? And this is really gross stuff. Equally as gross is this call here. Now, this is something from the right, but people on the right are getting so frustrated because they believe that they are essentially, their voice is not being heard. They're not allowed to speak out. They see themselves being censored over and over again. They see themselves being gaslit by the media. Right now, social media will not allow you to talk about the election. And they are saying they're going to purge channels for claiming that there might be some issues with it. And so this is from We the People. I covered this before. I said I was going to do a longer dive into it, but I really don't feel like I need to do all that. We can just look at the highlights here. And it's basically talking about Lincoln and how he suspended habeas corpus and did a bunch of things like martial law. And my answer to that is no. And people who are on the right who are calling for this, just you're not in the right mind. You're not in the right place. We need to be trying to make peace. And I understand the left does not care, but you still need to try. You need to try. You need to censure people in the legislatures and Congress, the Senate, whatever it may be, but you need to try and do something as far as make peace. So I have these little memes here. This is 2016. Russia interfered with the election. 2020. How dare you question the integrity of the election? Yeah, and we're not allowed to now on YouTube at all, or they will ban you supposedly. We'll see. But this is how you get war, folks. There is no discussion. Here's another meme. 2016. We won. Get over it. And then it was impeach him, repeal the Electoral College, not my president. Who is looking for a might makes right approach? Who are the totalitarians? I believe there was clear signs of voter fraud and we need a recount. And he's like, oh, LMAO, Cope Harder, conservative, or conservative or whatever he's, I don't know. Guys, this doesn't help. This doesn't help. People who are trying to lower the temperature, like someone like, say, Jordan Peterson a few years ago, trying to lower the temperature, trying to make peace, trying to say, hey, we can go too far. Here are some reasons. Let's look at things. No, he was called a Nazi. Everyone's called a Nazi because that is the false dichotomy. And the reality is that is just part of the Hegelian dialectic. Now, if you are a Christian, if you're not, go ahead, turn it off now, whatever. I just want to read some words to you real quick. This is from Matthew 24. This is Jesus saying in verse 45, it says, who then is a faithful and wise servant, whom his master has made ruler over his household to give them food in due season? Blessed is that servant whom his master, when he comes, will find so doing. Assuredly, I say to you that he will make him ruler over all his goods. This is someone who basically kept the commandments of Christ, is what they are saying. But if that evil servant says in his heart, my master is delaying his coming, and begins to beat his fellow servants and to eat and drink with drunkards, the master of the servant will come on a day when he is not looking for him, and at an hour that he is not aware of, and will cut him in two and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Now, why do I bring all of that up? Well, there are all kinds of interpretations of that particular scripture that people like to have, but this is what it meant for 3 centuries of Christianity. There are the people, the sheep and the goats, who serve God, who supposedly are in the church, or the wheats and the tares. The parable of the virgins who ran out of oil and those who had it. all of these are messages saying that there will be people that claim to be Christians, that claim to be in the church, who will go and do things that are not within the teachings of Christ. Read the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5 through 7. That is the Sermon on the Mount. That is the basis of Christianity. Is there more? Absolutely. I mean, as far as Jesus' message goes, that is the basis. And then read through the parables of that. When you do that, and you do that without adding anything but just what it says and what Jesus says, and or you compare that to what the early church said about those things versus later church history and what modern people believe today about it, you'll see that Jesus says very clearly, there will be some who say they are Christians that I will not call my own, and I will reject, the sheep and the goats. They will go and have that eternal punishment. You know, both Paul and Peter talk about this as well, that it would be better that you never knew him. And those of you calling for war and violence, you're wrong. We need to simmer down the rhetoric. Now, don't get me wrong. I like memes and I joke around, and I have another show, a live show where we joke, although I try not to ever condone violence because I don't believe in it. I actually left my former professions in order so that I would not have to do violence. And, went back into one because I felt the need to, and it was a mistake, certainly a mistake to do such a thing. Fortunately, I wasn't there too long and left mainly originally because of the corruption. But still, did not want to have to participate in violence. And there's a reason why, because my faith and my beliefs. You have to understand something, folks. If you are going to uphold the likeness of Christ, you are not to participate in violence. You should not be calling for civil war. And perhaps you could say it's for your children and grandchildren. I don't think so. It actually is not good. Those people on the left who are calling for all this violence, they don't understand that they will be drugged out and shot in the streets, and they will be by the leftists. In fact, we can see video from Project Veritas of them talking about this kind of stuff. Those of you on the right who are calling for the boog, I think mostly you're just memeing, but some of you people believe that, it should come. There are people that are quote-unquote accelerationists that just want it to happen. Either way, make no mistake that civil war is coming. Now, it's my belief that the all-out, complete war is going to be at least one administration away, but I believe two. I believe that it will take us toward the year 2030 or so. I think we have about that long, but barely. There will be more people who are shot and killed in the streets. There will be more people beaten by Antifa. There will be more escalation of violence from the right. And make no mistake, if the right really wanted to escalate violence, these people in the street who call themselves Antifa or BLM or whatever else who are doing these horrible things, these leftists, there wouldn't be any resistance from them. And the reason why I know this is because there's a small faction of them that actually have military training, that actually have experience fighting in the streets. It's actually, I think, in part why they use the idea of BLM, because a lot of people that grew up in tougher neighborhoods, in the black community, they know how to scrap to some degree. But it's not the same as people who were in warfare, folks. It's going to be brutal, and it's going to be horrible. And most of you don't understand. And those of you who have been to war, those of you that have been to war, you know the terrors and the horrors. You've seen friends die. You've seen innocent people killed. Perhaps you dealt with it, but when it starts becoming your family, when it starts becoming people you've known all your life, it's a very different thing. And it's evil. And God help us if we go that far. But I don't know, folks. It's time to call for peace. It's time to get our heads straight. It's time to recognize that we are in this cultural war. We have been in forever. We're in a cold civil war. There are some skirmishes, and now the government is breaking out some things. And mind you, if Biden wins this election, if that happens, the Great Reset, the globalism, all that stuff will come in, and things will get worse because people will become more desperate. I don't want to be a prophet. I want to be wrong. I really, really do. And I also understand the fate of prophets. Mocked, scorned, laughed at, beaten, and killed. Every time. It's the reality. I'll accept that if that's the calling that God has for me. But I don't want to be right about any of these things. But I want you all to be aware of what is coming. So, with all that, folks, this has been All Minus One Quick Shots. Please be safe, be careful, and be well.